What happens when your startup becomes large enough that it requires professional management? That's where Bruce Blessington comes in. He has extensive experience managing multi-million-dollar medical device companies, and welcome to the Language of Business.
Thank you, Greg.
How do you manage a multi-million-dollar company?
Well, of course, it depends on the nature of the business, but managing a multinational, multi-million-dollar company employs some of the very same principles that one might employ in a smaller business. Start first by hiring and motivating the very best people you can get to go to work for you. And then have a clear sense of mission and focus, and be sure that that mission and focus is shared throughout the organization. Whether the organization is 4 or 5 people or 4 or 5,000 people, it's still the same formula.
How does an industry's value chain affect its products, apropos to what you brought?
The industry that is represented here is the orthopedic world, and it consists of a handful of large OEMs, names that you would recognize: Stryker, for example, J&J DePuy, Smith & Nephew.
And OEM stands for?
Original Equipment Manufacturer, yes.
Okay.
So these individual companies that are quite substantial global firms retain for themselves the ability to manufacture the most valuable components in the mix. Now, this happens to be the femur end of a complete knee replacement, and it would fit if you were standing. It would be in this position, and if you had your knee bent, it would rotate.
Sure.
In like fashion. So the fact of the matter is, this by itself doesn't get the job done. It needs to have ancillary materials like this cutting block, for example. The cutting block is not made by the large manufacturers. It's made by a specialist manufacturer who provides the entire engineering and manufacturing of this particular component. And
is this cutting board set for these products?
Yes, it's product specific. In fact, each manufacturer has their own set of installation tools, and they use this to capture the hospital. They give the tools to the hospital in consideration for the hospitals continuing to use their knee product.
Do the orthopedic surgeons need special training per manufacturer, or is their training sufficient regardless of the product?
The manufacturers provide training for the surgeon on their product, and that is true throughout the industry. Obviously, there are great similarities between the procedures for replacing one knee and another, but there are some finer points that definitely need to be part of the instruction of the surgeon.
And what can you tell us about spinal?
Well, the spine companies are some of the same players that are in the knee space. However, this particular device is one that would be used to stabilize the spine of a patient who's had a disc fusion. And it consists really of rods and pedicle screws. These screws are inserted by the surgeon into the bone structure of the spine, and then the rod added and tightened down in a precise location to be sure that the spine is stabilized. You see 2 sets of rods and screws in this.
Is the addition to the screw to give a little bit of give during the surgical procedure?
The screw can be inserted with quite a high degree of precision by the surgeon, but not sufficient to not require a final adjustment. And the ability of this screw to articulate, as it does, gives the surgeon that freedom.
Publicly traded versus privately held, does it matter?
Oh yes, it does indeed. Certainly the complexity rises considerably with a publicly traded company, both in terms of the financial reporting requirements, as well as the fact that you are now subject to a great deal of scrutiny, particularly from the analyst community. And here in the United States, of course, we have the dreaded quarterly results meetings. In the UK and the EU is half year, so you get a bit of a breather. But there's no question, particularly when you're in a period of growth or restructuring, that a private company is more advantageous.
When it comes to medical device technology, organic growth or growth by acquisition?
I'm biased. I like organic growth. And I think it is a notion that if you invest in my company, you're investing in my company. You're not investing in the prospective acquisition that I have cooking on the back burner. And all too often, growth by acquisition results in a group of non-integrated structures that may not share the same culture, and the results aren't quite as happy as were projected. So the most common mistake in acquisitions is not dealing with the cultural aspect, the people aspect, if you will, of the target company.
Bruce, thank you.
Thank you, Greg. It was a pleasure to be here.
Bruce Blessington, a CEO with extensive experience managing multi-million-dollar medical device companies.